Everyone, let's welcome Jay Tallsquall to Dragon Talk. Hi, Jay.
Hey, how are you all doing?
Very, very
It
good.
is so great to be here.
It's
We're
great to
excited to
have
have you.
you.
Gosh,
Yeah,
your
no,
beard
Greg's
looks
been
amazing.
stalking you for years and years.
Yeah, it has been. It is. I think the stalking went for me stalking Greg, and then now it's sort
Mutual.
of turned around a little bit. But no, I'm glad I was finally able to make it on. Like I said, in another circumstance, I would love to come up and see you all in studio and up at y'all's place. But hey, this is the next best thing, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we're trying to make everything work here. And you have been, as I said in the intro for this, just all over Dungeons and Dragons community for the last, many, many years.
Yeah, about 3.5 years that I've been around doing different things. First, somewhat in just the streaming space on Encounter Roleplay, but then when he became a part of the D&D family, doing Learn by Play, was on that for 3 seasons, and then I've got my own campaign that I ran for charity for 3.5 years. So that was a blast. Just wrapped that up after 140 sessions.
Whoa.
140, and that was Vice, right?
Yeah, the Vice. Yeah, we started off, all the way back in late 2017, and we did it 100% for charity. Just that was sort of how we wanted to go about having both the interaction with our chat to let them be able to donate for dice rolls and things to happen in the game, but just decided that we were going to support different charities. And so over the course of our 140 sessions and 3.5 so years, we raised $18,800 some odd dollars for 24 different charities.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So it was a really amazing thing to be a part of, and to see, we always talk about the D&D community and just how amazing they are. We aren't a big dollar donation. So that was truly raised, bits and dollars and $2 and $5 donations over the course of those sessions. Every once in a while, like on one of our anniversary episodes, we would have, you could get like a boon for a character or something for a $25 or $50 donation. But for the most part, that was $2, $3, $5 donations, and for the cast we had swear jar as well. So there was a little bit that went
that's a good idea
from the cast for the swear jar. Sometimes it'd be like, I'm putting my money in right now because
I'm just going to drop a 20 in here because
go ahead and
I know
pay
where
it
we're
forward
headed.
for everything to come.
This bomb is worth it.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
So the people, fans watching, could make a donation and then impact some part of the game?
Correct. We had everything. One of the big ones that most people, we had, one thing was a healing die that as a free action, like during combat, you could have a D10 healing die, which was $1. It was $1 to donate a D10 healing die. Not game changing, but lets people be involved with. And I can tell you, as a DM, you start planning for that, knowing because for a long time we're a kind of healerless, clericless party.
Whoa.
So that was sort of why we started this, was because we had a bard, and then we ended up having a multi-class cleric, but we really didn't have a dedicated healer in our party. So it was pretty much potions and healing die for the chat for a lot of our experience. And so that actually, it was kind of interesting. We ended up with almost the chat being our healer.
Well, that's cool. They were the cleric.
Yeah, they were the cleric, and so it was interesting. And again, it was at a price point. People could do either bits or could do just $1 donation, and so it did let people feel like they were a part of the combat. As the combat's going on, we had 6 players, so it would take a little while for a round to go through. But you would see where, okay, someone's getting low on health, and here would come a healing die from the chat to keep them up and keep them going.
So were there any boons for the dungeon master? Any ways that you could kind of trick the players a little?
We did have a couple. One of the things that we had was luck die. We started off doing that you could donate a natural 20, but even us as players, having the auto success, when it started to take away some of the fun of it. So we did it. That would be a reroll. That if you had a bad D20 roll, you could roll it again. And that was one of our higher donations. I believe those were $5 or $10. But that's what they would donate to the DM, was that if I had a bad roll, that I could re-roll it. But for the most part, I think the donations for me were some of the boons that I got to make up. We had a sentient weapon that was gifted that became a huge part of our story. We had one that was given like on week 10 that didn't literally come into effect until session 139, which was our tabaxi. When I was a boon for our tabaxi, no one knew what it would be. I just say each character has a boon. I've always set aside what it is. And we ended up that over the course of this month that we were doing this, people had donated to each character. And the tabaxi, of course, was an extra life. It's a cat, right? So they had an extra, didn't know it through the entire game, never died literally until session like 139.
Whoa, 139 out of 140.
Out of 140,
okay.
Yeah. Rolled a nat 1 on death saving throws when they were doing this huge ceremony with like summoning an undead dragon. So it was perfect story-wise that, that's what finally did them in. And lo and behold, goes sort of into the afterlife, through the veil. And his mother, who, of course, tragic backstory, was there and kisses him on the forehead and sends him back and says, it's not your time yet. And so it was this
that
perfect,
gives me goosebumps.
It was perfect. It was just this perfect thing that, he was ready to sacrifice himself to save the world, to summon this undead dragon, basically a good, Draco Lich type idea, and sacrificed his life. Here comes the death saving throw, rolls a natural 1. So everyone thinks like, he's like, I'm not using a luck die. This is perfect. Goes through, and lo and behold, I can pull this sticky note off. It's like, I've been holding on to this for literally 120 sessions.
Wow.
And it is,
my God,
an extra life for our wizard.
That is great. Amazing.
D&D, man, right?
Right? Everybody likes to say that humans can make stories out of everything, but like that's what it is, right? Is you take these random bits and memories and all of a sudden you can kind of craft it. And the Dungeon Master do that all the time, but it's also like great when it happens with the players, with the audience, with everyone happening and contributing to this cooperative storytelling. You're right. That's D&D.
Well, and I'm sure you all have experienced this. There are weird moments in D&D where you're just kind of like, there's something bigger happening here, where the dice just fall. That that narrative beat or story that you're wanting to tell, and the dice cooperate, or even that the dice don't cooperate, but allow that moment, that natural 1 on a death saving throw when raising, an undead dragon, normally just being, oh no, but ended up being this great story beat.
Yeah. It is. Those moments are so wonderful when they happen. It's like the story that you never dreamed of telling just unfolds right before you.
Oh yeah.
And of course you could not have planned that. But what?
And if you had, it would have felt false. It would have felt not right.
Yeah.
That's the crazy part is, we've had so many of those times, where you were so sure, characters and DM, this was the direction that this story was going to go. And then the dice fall and it goes in this new direction that is so much better and greater than anything you were expecting or planning, or even just in everyone's narrative voice thinking, yep, that's kind of how this is going to unfold. That's how we ended up having basically a drag race across some salt flats between a dinosaur and a dragon. Dragon flying, a dinosaur, our polymorph party member as a T-Rex, basically racing a silver dragon across the salt flats to try to get to this final destination they were getting to. And again, that was never in my wildest dreams. Like one of my characters, I was like, oh yeah, you all level up. And my, again, same wizard. He's just like, well, I've got this wand of polymorph. What level was that dinosaur we saw 6 months ago? I'm like, oh yeah, that orc.
Yeah. That's one of the most D&D sentences ever, too. Of like, we were just our polymorph party member drag racing across a salt flat to get. I'm like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
It can
love
happen.
it. I love it. And
D&D.
congratulations on like making it 140 sessions. I mean,
Yeah.
I've done a bunch of dungeon mastering, mostly one shots and things like that, but I've never gotten to that level of storytelling to get to that, beginning, middle, and end of a campaign.
We all are kind of amazed that we got there. We did have one player who wasn't able to make it through all of it, but that we were able to have 6 players basically be there through the entire arc and stick with it. And for us, one of the interesting parts is we were always on a virtual tabletop, because my cast, we have someone who lives in Australia, someone who lives in New Zealand, a cast member who is in out in Canada, 2 of us are in Florida, and then 1 is over in England.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. So
Oh,
we
the
would play
scheduling. What time did you
2
guys play?
o'clock 2 o'clock on Saturdays.
Oh my God.
And it literally is my Australian and my New Zealand players would wake up Sunday morning.
Yeah.
That they'd be drinking coffee while my player in England is having a Guinness at 10 o'clock at night as we're playing, because it was the only time we could all get together.
Yeah.
But no, it all worked out, and I think we all just got so invested in it after a short time. And I will say, having it be streamed and knowing you had a show to make,
Yeah.
most people would sort of try to make it. And I will say, it's always nice when you do have that many players, and the number of stories we had interwoven. If you were 1 player down, you went ahead and went forward. We were a heavy role play group, so it wasn't like there was a combat necessarily every week. And so there was lots of times that we did go with only 5 out of the 6 players. But for the most part, I think that also kept it going, is people are like, yeah, well, if you're not there, we're still playing. And so I think, people do get invested knowing that the story moved on and want to be back part of it. Now, certainly streaming and having everything on YouTube helped a ton as well, because they could go watch and see what happened. And, for the most part, we knew each other's characters well enough of like, well, they hung in the background, or, if it was our rogue was off doing, roguey things, it's like, I'd be like, yeah, you arrive back to the party, you have 10 extra gold. Don't know where that came from.
Let's not talk about it, shall we?
So you were the dungeon master the whole time for 140 episodes, and this is the homebrew campaign.
Homebrew campaign, yes.
So when you started, you obviously didn't know, like, oh, this is going to be 140 sessions. Like, you don't know that. So, like, how do you plan a story, a campaign, without really knowing the end, like where it ends?
Well, I did something. It's interesting. I got a lot of heat for this because I was a new DM. I had played all the way back in 2nd edition. So I had played way back in 2nd edition, then sort of took a big break until, like most people, I discovered Critical Role, got me super excited about doing it again, and then wanted to hop in and try it again. And what I had was, I sort of had almost from day one these what I call destiny arcs, which was, hey, if everything goes right, what is this character's destiny? After we'd had backstories and talked about their characters, helped them develop their characters, and me knowing the story of this world that I had put together, it was sort of, I kind of made these what I call destiny arcs of, this is kind of where I think if everything goes right, this is where they might end up. Some of them followed their arc. Some of them went a completely different way. Some of those went left, right, and center around it. But
did you make those public? Did the
I didn't
audience
make them
know
public
those?
because I didn't want the characters to know. I made it public that I had made them, and that I got a huge. The internet's great for feedback. I got lots of feedback.
That's the most positive statement I think I've ever heard in my
I know, right? Are you sure you're not in PR?
I know, that's some great spin there.
About that, I was railroading my party and railroading the campaign. It would never last, and that how dare I? I don't understand.
How dare you?
How dare I? But it's part of the reason, I had a plan, and I think that the characters could feel it. The other thing that I had, the world had a destiny arc.
Ooh.
So if the party decided to, if they never came together, I had what is going to happen to the world. And so I had, I called it the world machine that I always told my players about is, the world machine's keeping on moving. It is those gears and cogs of the world machine are still moving. They're, our main big bad. She had a plan that was tied to this, celestial convergence, in the world that we started the campaign. It was 6 months out from this convergence. And basically, if they decided to drink in taverns and get into bar fights, her plan was going to move forward and continue along its path. It was, as they uncover this sort of plot and what's going on and these things that have occurred in the world, and as they're discovering it, because I think, them again realizing the world, especially, it was a level 4 character, doesn't revolve around them yet.
Yeah.
And I think that, knowing where the world was going to end up, and then kind of how, if everything goes right, how can these 6 characters change the world? I went into it with sort of that planned out. A lot of stuff left on the drawing board. A lot of stuff changed completely.
Yeah.
I keep talking about our wizard, but our wizard had this, we started off that he was out looking for this society that always kept the secrets. He ended up about halfway through, magic happens, basically created a golem that then became a real boy. And so suddenly the campaign was about his son. His story, all of the stuff about trying to find the secret society and find this knowledge was left behind, because what he found was most important wasn't the secrets of the world. It was raising his son. And
That's
so
cool.
even that became a great story of, this wizard who was all about knowledge, all about discovering the secrets. And, the biggest secret of all, it's kind of like that meme with the thing, is the fact that, he, being a father and having a son, was the most important secret that he discovered.
And that was unplanned?
Unplanned.
Okay, so listening to you talk about this is what blows my mind about D&D every time, is imagine you're pitching a novel, and the novel is what you're talking about. I mean, I'm hooked. You're like, and the biggest secret of all was raising his son, and none of the other important stuff. That was not planned. This is just a story that just evolved. Yep. And yet hearing you talk about it, I'm like, keep going. Yeah, I like where you're going. This is like a pitch. It's just a story that you and your friends told together.
Dice. We on that one, it was interesting. In my homebrew world, I had this whole sort of other piece of magic called these dragon runes, because he was torn on being a sorcerer and a wizard. I was like, well, tell you what, I'm happy to, let's keep you as a wizard. And instead of you multi-classing, and, if you just want him to be really focused on dragons, I'm going to make up this whole sort of dragon rune side things. And it was these runes that sort of represent big things. It was life, death, blood, cosmos, basically a lot of the homebrewed spells and other things. I will say, I know we all love Kobold Press. That's how I integrated a lot of Kobold Press's deep magic into my world. Was I turned them into these dragon runes that he would be able to utilize. So it was like a once per day type idea to utilize a dragon rune. And one of them was life. And I started off with a life piece of, you can make these little golems, using combat. And the player just was amazing. He does the first one, like the lowest level, which was supposed to be, it's a golem that lasts for, I think it was like a D6 or a D8 minutes type idea. And he just paints this scene of him creating this little basically a baby Groot type idea. And his face lights up as the player and as the character as he's telling this story. And I sort of, it looks sort of, this little construct looks up at you, and he goes, and I look down and I go, hello there, I'm your dad. And it was just like, it was this moment, and we were just like, luckily it was right at the end of the session. And so we went ahead and cut there, and I was like,
ooh, that's a good ending.
Oh yeah, no, it was one of those moments where you're just like, yep, it doesn't get any better than this. And he kept using the room to bring back this son. And eventually, so, as a DM, you can't just like, nope, sorry, only ever lasts for 6 minutes. No, I mean, it was like, so it became this whole thing of him being able to build this construct so then it could stay, alive all the time. And, crucible of souls, and into the Shadowfell and all kinds of fun stuff like that. Later, he has a son that's basically the first Warforged. And it turned up, that's how we introduced Warforged, is that literally our wizard made the first Warforged for our world.
I love that. And that was, when Jeremy Crawford and I were talking about releasing the Eberron book, he was like, that's a great way to introduce it. Like, what if your campaign is about how these are introduced in your campaign, and you were doing it already and it worked perfectly.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. You can sort of see the different releases of different things that come out.
And how they came into your campaign.
And how they come out. It's like, hey, look, Eladrin are here. I suddenly, I have an Eladrin. And so we did. I mean, it was very interesting because over the course of those 3 years, this sort of renaissance of D&D, I think when we first started, I guess it was probably just Sword Coast was out. So I don't even think, maybe Mordenkainen's that's the next one, right?
No, Mordenkainen's was 2018, wasn't it?
So anyway,
yeah.
But literally as books and books and books were added on, and it was about the time that Eberron was released. I was playing in an Eberron campaign on another station that had a Warforged in it, and it just clicked. I'm like, oh my gosh.
This is what they're doing. Yeah.
This is what's happened. These dragon runes, this old ancient magic, have suddenly introduced Warforged, on this world. So it was cool. It's just D&D.
I think you're inspiring Shelley. I think you're going to start.
Yes, I actually am. I love so many of these ideas. I'm just listening to you talk and how you're like, this is important to my players. So let me find a way to make all of these things work for you and work for the campaign. And then like you're ending up with also like really amazing storytelling hooks throughout all of it. But I love how you're working with the players.
I think always from very early on, and I think frankly, it didn't take long for me to figure out. I had this is my world for like about 4 or 5 sessions. And finally I realized, wow, every time I hand over the reins and loosen up the grip and really let the players run with what they see, what they do, the story becomes so much richer than anything that I could have imagined. So I would say, we had a really powerful episode, about episode 10 or 11, which it was one of those really risky episodes. We had talking about safety systems and things like that. We had a lot of trust built up, and I let people know we were going to, all the way from the beginning, we have a world which has had a huge racial prejudice piece of it for the Genasi and the Tiefling. They were blamed for the fall of magic in my world. And my very good friend who I played with before, Alicia, who is a Black woman, said she wanted to play a Genasi. And so it made it just this incredible way to be able to explore this, and explore it in a way that was very real to a lot of us. And so that episode, like I said, right, it's The Race for Verdant Falls. It's like episode 11. was the first time, because they'd sort of been out in the countryside, that they come face to face with some of the prejudice in the world. And the players did phenomenally with it. And we all, at the end of it, I mean, we spent probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours sort of decompressing from the end of it, because we touched on a lot of really, really tough topics. Things that, again, you don't want to do without your players being invested. I mean, there was human trafficking involved. There was religious persecution. There was gaslighting. There was just a lot in that session. It's one of the few that we've put up a content warning on.
Yeah.
But it was so powerful at the end of it. But that was episode 10. And I think after that session, I think pretty much everyone we're in this to the end.
Invested. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're invested.
That's
to
good.
see where this goes.
And kudos to you for making sure that, you guys had talked about that ahead of time, and that you knew that those were the topics you were going to be investigating.
You have to, and to share, again, to make it this collaborative storytelling. Everyone's like, oh, well, you're going to ruin the surprise. There were still plenty of surprises, even though they knew what topics were coming. And we found that more and more along. I mean, the dragon versus dinosaur, race, started off in a text of, during the week, of my player asking, hey, what level was that dinosaur? And so, I mean, I'd originally had that scene of like, okay, they're going to do, they're going to be, there's no way they're going to beat the dragon. The dragon's get there first. I've got this whole thing lined up. It's this big, giant, elaborate trap. And they're like, what if we turn into a dinosaur? Well, okay, let's. But it suddenly became so much better than what I had planned. I mean, no matter how sneaky of a plan that I had put up for our big villain, came nowhere near to the joy of not only having this giant skill trick race between the dragon and the dinosaur, but then them actually getting to face, the big bad who was supposed to get away right then, right there, early on in the campaign. They were such the underdogs. And, lucky for all of us, I had written the TPK. I mean, it was written. I mean, what was going to save the TPK was that extra life from the wizard, right?
Right.
So that was one of the reasons I was willing to go forward with this. I'm like, you guys are not going to win this fight. They were very clever. The dice fell their way. And, the second end of part of the campaign completely changed because the big bad was dead. Or like erased from fate dead.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you're like, all right, well, that's,
Well, there we go.
That's collaborative storytelling. That's so good. Well, one thing I wanted to talk to you about, I mean, your beard is amazing, by the way.
Oh, yeah,
the purple. And you mentioned earlier it's the ACE
yes, it is
colors.
The ACE Pride flag. Yep.
I think that's a term that a lot of people are learning about now. So, I mean, what's something that you can tell our listeners about what that means and what that means within the D&D community?
So the ACEs is short for folks who are identified on the asexual spectrum. It is a part of that whole spectrum is asexuality, aromantic, and also demisexual and demiromantic, which is a whole lot of words for basically folks who don't experience sexual attraction in sort of the way that most people think about along the other spectrums of queer and hetero world. And a lot of people aren't aware. I mean, I certainly wasn't. I mean, I'm going on 49. It was something that when I finally discovered it was a huge relief because, up until that point, it was sort of like, I'm broken. It was this, everyone else is so obsessed. We have a very sex-saturated culture in the media and everything that we consume. And it was something that I just couldn't engage with. It was something that never was something that really I understood or could understand how people could be so controlled by those portions of their life. And so when I found out about asexuality, it clicked for me. It was just like, okay, wow. And, luckily through the internet and everything else, was able to reach out and talk with some other people about it. It wasn't until actually 2018 at Gen Con where I sort of became public with my asexuality. I was in my private life and with people I knew that's how I identified, but I would say it's the first time I wore my colors in public. It was at Gen Con. And I will say it was very much because of the influence of the D&D community and the TTRPG community. And how vocal and visible everyone was there. And, good friends of mine who were, in fact, some of my players were one of the reason that I sort of had the confidence to even do that. And it's been amazing since I started using my Twitter as a platform that the number of people who have either DM'd me or responded to messages I send out about how that's clicking for them as well, that they never quite understood why things were just so different for them. And there's very little representation out there. It was one of the questions we all talked to each other before we started recording our panels, like, hey, do we have a list or something of good asexual representation that we can talk about? And we all sort of started really digging deep and hard and start Googling. And we're just like, okay, if we have to dig that hard, that tells us. I mean, and so we are going to put together a document to release when the panel releases. But I mean, it's one of those big things that, especially, one of the big things that we see in so many of our stream games and our, the big stream games from Critical Role all the way down to little tiny people like the Vice, is the shipping community. Oh, these two people should be in a relationship. Oh, it's all about the smooching. Oh, they should get together. Oh, the art and fiction, everything else. And, it can be a very frightening space for asexual people to, that suddenly they're forced into that. In fact, that's one of the lines and veils we talked about, that a lot of asexual role players put that on there, is that they don't want forced shipping from their DMs or from their other players. On the same note, there's some that if you're with a group you want to trust, like, what, I would like to explore that. Role playing is a wonderful form. I hate to say it as therapy, but it lets you try to experience in someone else's shoes some things that either scare you or that you've been curious about. I know a lot of people do it with their sexual identity, are able to help discover themselves through their role play. And so that is, a lot of what we talked about is, how you can represent asexual relationships that, oh, they're holding hands. Okay, the sex happens in 2 hours. Every TV show out there, right? Oh, they looked longingly in each other's eyes, 3 episodes, so they're having sex. Or the tension that, oh, this whole season is going to be building up towards, when they finally, have sex. And so how do you show a non-sexual loving relationship? And what is that? And how does that differ, but also be just as valid as a sex-based one? So one of the big things that, we talk about is, because it does get a little bit complicated, is, aromanticism, which is a romantic relationship that some people don't feel romantic attraction, which is, those things that we typically think of romance, of, holding hands, going, candlelight dinners, dancing, in the moonlight, things like that, is sort of on that aromantic spectrum. The big third one, which even I surprised some of my fellow panelists about, is the aesthetic attraction piece, which a lot of people, it's just now psychologists and a lot of papers are being written about, is there's actually a third leg to that table, which what are you aesthetically attracted to? Not that in a sexual way, not in a romantic way. It's just like, hey, I admire, that person, like for me, I consider myself homoaesthetic. I find the male body more aesthetically attractive than the female form. It plays into my fitness, into my bodybuilding, into my cosplay. That's just, it's how I'm wired. That is entirely different from a romantic, what my romantic attraction is and what my sexual attraction is. And so, just the education piece of that alone is, it's a lot to swallow and a lot for people, because for a lot, whatever the percentage is of people, all three of those things are aligned. The person that you are aesthetically attracted to is the person that you want to be romantic with, and it's the person you want to have sex with.
Yeah.
That's all, it's a pillar and not necessarily a thing that can be spread out into three different legs. And that was a whole decade of me figuring out who I was, because for a very long time, I just assumed I was gay because I thought guys were attractive. That was who I was looking at in gym class. It was like, I want to look like that guy. That's the way I want to look. That's how, that's what I find aesthetically pleasing, and, in South Georgia in the 80s, that means you're gay. It was a big education piece. And it's interesting as I talk to more and more people about that. And it's funny, a lot of the people in the fitness community, they're like, oh, well, yeah.
It kind of clicks for them a little bit.
A lot of bodybuilders, a lot of both female and male athletes who are physique athletes are homo aesthetic. They are more, attracted to that body that they are trying to build for themselves.
That's amazing. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Like hearing you say that, it makes a lot of sense.
You don't work that hard. It's truly, it's kind of one of those, I've had a lot of people just like, wow, yeah, duh.
Yeah. And and I feel like I'm giving you lots of kudos over the course of this entire conversation, but you being able to explain that so succinctly, in this interview, as well as in your online, presence, has educated me. I feel like I understand a lot more about those terms and what it means in very simple ways. And I think Dungeons and Dragons, you're right, is a way for people to explore that aspect of themselves. And we've had many guests before who've talked about how it's awakened things with their gender identity or their sexual orientation. But it's really interesting to me to be like, oh, well, of course I want to play a fighter or a paladin type characters, because they have that, that physique and that aesthetic that you're searching for, and that makes so much more sense. And then I immediately start going back to people I've known in my past who were, now I can see were aromantic or asexual, and I can only offer sympathy to folks growing up who had that type of thing. Oh, well, they'll grow out of it, or they will meet someone and they're going to finally have that thing click within them, and I might have even said some of those things because of how the media and everything kind of, it's just the norm. That's what you do. And that's what happens. And again, I congratulate you for being able to discuss it in terms and in ways that feels just so natural and real, and it feels like, oh, well, that's just how they're wired.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's, they're, and like you say, myself included, but, very much it was, I just I kept being told, you haven't found the right person. Once you find the right person, and whether it was male or female, once you find the right person, then you'll know, and everything will click, and it'll be this wonderful, beautiful experience, and your whole world will open up, and it's like, yeah, I'm 49.
I've met a lot of people in my life.
A lot of people.
And that just hasn't clicked.
Back when I was doing cosplays, I was looking like a male model. I was hanging around with people who looked like male Rados, and still there wasn't nothing. I'm thinking that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's I think it's really got to be freeing to have this vocabulary to talk about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the biggest thing for me. And I'm an engineer by trade. So to have words matter. We're in a world where words seem to have less and less matter. But just being able to have those three different words to go like, no, aesthetic attraction, romantic attraction, and sexual attraction, and they can all be completely unique to you. I mean, it's like your red, green, blue sliders, of how different you can make your picture look by sliding those around. And once I sort of figured out, well, I'm definitely here on this one and there on that one and there on this one, it just became, so very clear. And I mean, for myself, so much of my anxiety and mental, just not, again, when you walk around your whole life feeling broken, it weighs on you.
Yeah. And where even well-meaning people could reinforce things that just make you feel horrible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. And, even with the whole thing of the jokey, but kind of, unfortunately what sticks, the all men think about is sex. I mean, we've all heard people say that 100% that, if you're a man, all you do is think about sex.
Yeah.
Well,
or
suddenly when you're a man who doesn't think that way and can't figure out why you don't think that way, it's very alienating. I mean, that was why I was, the geek in the corner, playing D&D.
and weightlifting.
Second edition, I had that monster manual with the big 3-ring binder. I used to take it in my backpack to school. Yeah.
Well, what was it? I mean, maybe there's a connection there. What was it about Dungeons and Dragons, other than it being something that was a fun pastime? Do you think there was something in that role playing that let it be a solace for you?
Well, certainly there absolutely was. I mean, I've always read I read all the Dragonlance books, like when they were first coming out. I read the Mallorean, the Belgariad, I mean, the Tolkien books. So I was always attracted to it. And I also, from a very young age, I mean, we have big family reunions in my family. My mom's one of 10 kids. And so we always would get together and have a big family reunion. One of the big things we do is tell stories around the campfire. And, before I even knew what D&D was, we used to do a game around the campfire where everyone would tell a piece of the story, and then you pass it to the person to your left, and then they tell the next piece. They tell the next piece around the campfire. And that's how the kids, basically kept themselves entertained when you're out in the middle of, farm country in northern Florida, at a family reunion. And so in a weird way, we were already, because we did. Everyone sort of had their character and what they were doing. I mean, I can remember we told a story at the Paradise Saloon, and it was one of those great ones. And then when it wasn't that, it was ghost stories, and that we'd each tell a ghost story around the campfire. So I'd always sort of been a storyteller, and to have a way sort of to gamify that, I thought was really neat. I also have always enjoyed fantasy art. Both for the aesthetic piece of it, but also, I mean, gosh, that monster manual. I can remember that monster manual, and the fact that you'd flip through those pages, and me, engineer geek, the fact that I can put it in whatever order I want, because it was a 3-ring binder. That was a big deal for me. I mean, I'm that level of engineer geekiness. I mean, you should see my Google Drive folders for my campaign of 140 sessions. It's that bad. Everything deserves a spreadsheet. But
man, I need
I
some
think
of that.
that's the art certainly attracted me to it. But I was always into role playing games, and going and being the hero when I felt so unlike a hero in my life. When I felt that I was, just backs up a little bit. I didn't discover working out till I was 30. So up until then, I was the skinny, the very skinny, very small, tall, lanky guy. And so I really did not. It was a way, it was wish fulfillment of being able to play this big, strong character, like someone who I wanted to be like, and who could vanquish the foes or the monsters, or et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And there is that part about, fitting in, because you're part of this group. You have a party, and it's in D&D, it's okay to be different, because there's elves and there's tieflings, and there's all of these different types of characters out there, and everybody coexists together. So there is that kind of comfort in playing as well.
Absolutely.
You can see that.
Well, it's if you follow the rules, you can play the game and you're a part of a group. I mean, which, when you aren't good at socializing or whatever, it's a great crutch to have, of the, hey, I know the rules. I know what, you play nice with others, and, you get to, be a part of something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you said you discovered D&D fitness, or you discovered fitness. When you were 30, which is, only a scant 19 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, you've transformed your love of that and cosplay into the hashtag D&D fitness. And, as Shelley was saying, it's an inspiration for a lot of people out there to combine these things that at first you feel like are not in the same Venn diagram, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that, first thing, let me just say D&D Fitness has been this amazing, community effort. It started off with me a couple years ago, trying to help people who, about the same time Jox Machina was happening on Critical Role, I was having people ask me about fitness because they knew about my cosplay. And so some people who knew me through the D&D community would reach out and say, hey, what can I do to start just doing something better, either hearing about that I had started late in life or whatever. And so I started off with this whole thing where we rolled level 1, magic missile push-ups. So roll your D4s, and whatever comes up on the dice, you owe that many push-ups over the course of the entire day.
Nice.
Was how it all started. And, got a huge response back to that, people videoing from like them in airport terminals and in their living rooms and wherever, of doing their D&D push-ups for the day. So, we started doing these sort of challenges, and we started leveling up and doing more and more things. And, because life and work are life and work outside of D&D, there finally became a day where it's like, oh my gosh, today's the day, I need to send out a thing, but I don't have my dice with me. I'm in this meeting. And so I just sort of sent it to him, like, hey, can someone roll up a challenge for today? And about 10 people sent in their challenges. And I'm like, why am I taking all of this on myself? This should be all of us. Everyone's journey is different. I don't have any better information than anyone else. I can tell people how I got where I am and what that I'm doing. But hey, there's people out there who wanted to modify their push-ups into minutes of yoga, or others who are marathon runners who are like, can I do this for kilometers? And so, there was a quick, short, brief time where it was D&D fitness yoga, D&D fitness running, D&D fitness. And finally, it just was like, hey, you know what? We're all just one big group. Whatever your journey is, just share it. Tell us what you're doing. Tell us what you're eating. Tell us what you did healthy today. Tell us that you're not feeling great today. And is anyone else also not feeling great? And maybe we can all get back on the wagon together tomorrow. So it just became this sort of movement of folks really reaching out to each other. And just by having a hashtag that you can look at when you're not feeling motivated to get that workout in, to do something, whether it's walk around the block, whether it's walk to get your mail, or whether it's to go on a 10K run, that you can click on that hashtag and see all these faces of people who are taking pictures because they want to hike in, the North Carolina mountains, or someone else who, is walking over by a lake, or another person who is doing a push-up challenge, or someone else who's doing found this great stretching video. And so, yeah, I've been amazed. I've been motivated. I've been inspired by so many people and their journeys that they are taking and sharing. I'm in awe at this point that it has grown as much as it has, and that luckily so many people have found it and found inspiration from it.
Yeah, I love it. I often just search for the hashtag just to see what's up with D&D fitness, because it's exciting to see people who are either just starting their fitness journeys or their health journeys, and people who are showing the transformation, from the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like you started that, like you really, it really does inspire. And, research shows that the best way to be successful in your fitness and health journey is to have that community support around you, which is why, programs like Weight Watchers are successful, because they had the in-person meetings. And, that's essentially what you're doing with the D&D community. So well
Absolutely.
done.
It's like you say, I can list off a whole bunch of names of people, people who've lost 50 pounds, 20 pounds, who've, started new programs, who've done things. It's interesting because it used to be cosplay was always sort of what I would drive my fitness goals towards, for that, hey, here's the picture of me looking like that character at the end of my journey. And I was having a hard time finding something to really inspire me again to sort of go down this journey. And certainly with quarantine and everything like that, I fell way off of sort of my cosplay shape. And I did a post about big old long rant about people talking about dad bod and Zac Efron.
Yeah, I saw that.
Mm-hmm.
And and I realized how many people don't understand what an illusion those photos that they're seeing on Instagram or in cosplay photos or whatever. I tried to show, hey, here's me as a Spartan and here's me 12 hours later. And you can, it's obvious difference. You time it down to the hour for a photo shoot like that. Stars, when they know they've got their shirtless scene or their sex scene or their, that big money shot of them on the beach, they have trainers who get them literally ready. And it's like that shot happens at 10 o'clock on Tuesday, because that's when they're going to look in the condition that you, Mr. Producer and director, want them to look like.
Yes.
And so one of the things that I'm doing this time, instead of just doing my normal before and after, is I'm trying to share my whole journey. And it's really inspired me that this time people understand, no, it really is, 24 weeks, half a year between that before and the after. And this is how slow the progress is, that, it's, you see this tiny little difference from week to week, and eventually it does all start adding up. And so you get further and further away and comparing back, like, oh no, there really is a big change. But each one of those was this tiny step that a lot of times even the camera or yourself isn't seeing.
Right.
It's only over that time period. And, that's why people get discouraged, right? They're like, I've been working out for a month and I don't look any different. And the scale hasn't moved.
Yeah.
I've often told people, it's like, yeah, it's 6 or 8 weeks before you even begin to notice. It's 12 weeks before other people are going to start to really notice.
And that shouldn't be like the only metric to your success is like, well, the scale didn't move, or like my pants are still super tight. But I always think about, I have this super skinny friend who you would look at the skinny friend and you would be like, oh my gosh, she's perfect. Her body is, it's Greg
me.
Tito. But yeah, just super thin, looked great in a bikini, and you would think like that is the pillar of health. Oh no, she couldn't open a jar of pickles. She has zero muscle. She couldn't do 3 push-ups. And so you have to think about little things like this. The scale didn't move, but I did. I got up and I walked to get my mail, and I'm actually not as out of breath as I usually am.
Mm-hmm.
And that's huge. Or even just the decision of I'm hungry and I actually ate a piece of string cheese instead of a bag of chips like I normally would. You have to count all those small victories. And that's what I see people doing on this hashtag is I did this thing that I normally would not be getting accolades for, or even thinking it's a big thing. And people are responding to it with being positive about it. It's all part of the journey, man.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that is the biggest thing is, like you say, it's those victories. And, I've tried to reinforce it. It's like, yeah, my picture between last week and this week, but hey, I know I put in the time. I'm feeling better about myself. I know this is a journey. And, like you say, I mean, when I opened up the refrigerator, I reached for the celery sticks instead of for the pretzels or for, the peanut butter, or, hey, I ate breakfast, every day this week, of instead of having just coffee and toast,
Yeah.
had my egg whites. So I got my protein in early. Just those little habit things are such big victories.
Yeah.
They really are. And especially in an unsure time like this, I mean, I think it was 2 nights ago that I was like, I'm having either cookie dough or beer, which one is it? And you know what? It's okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the big thing, is that it is all right that you're going to have a day like that where it's like, you know what? I'm eating the chips and I'm eating every damn one of them and I'm licking the bag afterwards.
Yep.
And that's okay. Because you know what? That day when you were having a good day, you did reach for that string tease or those celery sticks. And that your week isn't ruined by that day. It's the, okay, I did this, but tomorrow I'm going to get back to my egg whites, or whatever.
Yeah. You're absolutely 100%. If you want to make a lifestyle change, then you have to allow yourself to eat a bag of chips and lick all the salt out of the inside of that bag.
Absolutely.
Because that's life. That's it's not realistic to think like you're never going to eat chips again. And like, don't make anything taboo.
And when the world's falling apart and the, COVID
Especially
is
now.
everywhere and, politics are, like, it's okay. Really, if you, gain a pound because of that bag of chips, you're all right. You're alive.
I will use a salty bag of chips as a mask, and I will just be happy,
Yes, dude,
like a trow.
Like Lay's or any of those, like if they made you like a mask,
and you just start eating chips the whole time.
That had like a little salty smell to it too, a little salt and vinegar.
I'm right there.
Why do we not have scented masks? Now I need to know.
I'm right. 100%. I'm there with you. And yes, salt and vinegar Lay's, 100%. I'm right there with you. If they were in the house, that would be what I'd be having after this interview.
I'm eating them right now in my
I was
head.
thinking. Oh, sorry, Greg. What?
I was just saying, I'm eating them right now in my head. I'm going to.
Me too.
I'm imagining. I have a very vivid imagination. Go ahead.
I was thinking, knowing that we were going to talk to you about the D&D fitness hashtag as well. But so I was trying to think, if you were a trainer to D&D characters, and you could only give each class one exercise that would help them, for their training, what would they be? And I was like, well, like a wizard, would you do something that works like the shoulder area so they can really throw those fireballs, or like a rogue? What would you
lift your wand?
Lift your wand.
Yeah. No, well, it's interesting. One of the exercises I do when I walk, because I'm very spoiled. Normally I have my gym, big old Gold's gym that I've worked out at for 2 decades, is 7 minutes away in my car. So I was always like, I don't need to buy home gym equipment because I will always just be able to hop in the car. So I don't have much gym equipment here at the house. But can I tell you one of the exercises that I do, and it's a good wizard exercise. And it's funny, one of my friends who was a drum major turned me on to it, is people don't realize, I should talk to Lauren about this, oboe crazy, is conducting. Literally for your shoulders, you will do that while you're walking for you pick for an entire block of actually arms up and doing conducting movements. Your shoulders will be on fire.
Interesting.
Tell you.
And you're not carrying anything, nothing.
Not a thing.
No body.
And I will tell you,
no weights.
Once you can do 1 block, do 2 blocks. And once you can do 2 blocks, I do, straight out to the side, straight up, and then straight back out to the sides, and then down to, all the way down to my hips type idea, this. And I do it for this big, long stretch along my walk. So it ends up, I do about 120 of them, of that sort of repetition. And by the end of it, I can't lift my arms.
Oh, that's funny.
And that's with no
I
weight.
wonder if that would inspire people to want to work out more. If we had a simple exercise, but we called it, like casting fireball or something.
Yeah, fire.
Right. Or
Somatic-
pulling your bow.
It's
Yes!
somatic components. It is your, because that's what I was thinking is with the wizard, with those some crazy somatic components of all that stuff.
Yeah.
You gotta have good shoulders for that, man.
Yeah. I was thinking like a rogue, like you might want to do like some calf raises, like if you have to be on your tippy toes a lot, and or like something like I feel like they're like crouching down a lot, so you might want to like
almost like
squats
window-esque type things, maybe sort of like I'm thinking for like a rogue for like sneaking underneath of like tripwires and stuff, maybe doing planks just because that's something people
that's
are familiar
good
with.
Yep.
Get that really powerful core. Certainly your fighters, paladins. I'm gonna go with pull-ups just in general because that's a great strength, just straight up strength exercise. I'm thinking with clerics of like, probably like farmer carries of like from carrying all the down, whenever you've got to drag that, whenever you
all
got to
the
drag
unconscious bodies
out of battle. So yeah, it's that, it's basically like doing fireman drags, like literally grabbing something and walking backwards. That's great hamstrings for dragging, dragging your fallen comrades out of there. You probably bard could do the same conductor type idea, or depending on your instrument. Golly, let's think some other classes.
Well, we had
barbarian can do a swinging of the axe type of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, like
kettlebells. Definitely kettlebells.
I love the kettlebells.
Yeah, kettlebells for your barbarian.
I'm going to do the barbarian workout. When we had a gym at work, so like we were very spoiled ones too, and we had those horrible ropes. Like
yeah.
But I hate them, which must mean they're good for me. But I was
monk for that. That's like flurry of blows to get that.
Yes.
So that rope is definitely a monk exercise.
Oh, I feel bad for those monks. Not great.
Those again, you want to talk about something that gets your shoulders and your core. Those ropes.
Those are bad.
Those are tough.
Bad. What about flipping tires? I always wanted to do that.
Flipping tires, golly. That sort of goes in the the barbarian piece, but
maybe a little cleric if like to carry.
Yeah, it's sort of the cleric, because everyone's like, oh, the cleric's just healed. Like, yeah, have you gone up against a storm cleric?
These are the things I like to think about pre-interviews.
No, I like that. Maybe the tire is probably like your artificer, sort of because they've got to move around all the big pieces and parts of all their inventions.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah. Yeah.
And the warlock is just
Eldritch Blast.
I was just gonna say, like, talking to their patron on the phone.
Probably curls because they're sitting in the back with a beer in one hand and shooting Eldritch Blast with the other. Kind of like that one, yeah. Yeah, they got to be able to do ambidextrous Eldritch Blasts.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you have to use your right hand to pick up your beer, so it's good to.
Yeah, it's good to be
practice
able to,
on both.
Definitely want to be able to have that.
Well,
awesome.
Next time I do a workout like this, I am going to think about a D&D workout. I'm going to not call it pull-ups. I'm really going to think like I'm doing my paladin workout now.
Paladin pull-ups.
Paladin pull-ups.
Oh, yeah. It's got alliteration and everything.
Alliteration.
You should post that on Twitter under the D&D Fitness there, Shelly.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, you're inspiring us in many ways today,
Obviously,
Jay.
yes.
Good stuff. Thank you so much for coming on and talking through all of these fun things. The Vice. Congratulations on finishing that campaign out. Are you going to be starting up anything else soon?
So the big one is I having that many sessions and the notes for all those sessions around is I am trying to assemble those into a world book. So some of those stories that we were telling and that Shelley was liking is we've got this is my Bird in the Storm. This is our little publishing house, which we've not published anything yet, but because we had to have a logo.
You gotta have the logo. Yeah, exactly.
We don't actually, we don't sell anything except for logo merchandise. Or
once you get the merch,
anything yet.
The books will follow.
Yeah, exactly. So, be looking for that. I'm actually hoping to release a little module that takes place in my world, just sort of starting to get my chops going. Because it is a homebrew world, it will be over like on Drive Through RPG. It is heavily influenced influenced by all the fun and excitement in the D&D universes. And so that's next, with the idea of eventually, hopefully having a big giant world book out there for people to be able to have their own campaign in the world that we played in.
Awesome.
That's
And
cool.
where can people find out about Bird in the Storm? Anything else you're doing? You know, obviously, the hashtag
Mainly,
D&D Fitness.
is out through the internet. Pretty much everywhere I am Tallsquall, and have links to all my other stuff out there. I believe I only share the moniker Tallsquall with a squall jacket sold at Land's End that comes in a tall size. So usually if you Google Tallsquall, it is me, or people who've misidentified me in cosplay pictures. Yeah, so you can find me out there. I do have a YouTube channel. The entire Vice campaign is available on YouTube. It's like 500 plus hours of content, but you are more than welcome. It's, like all streaming shows, even like early Critical Role, it's a little rough there at the beginning, but yeah, we get our stride there at the end. We do have lots of highlights from it as well, which I often will share out on Twitter. But yeah, Twitter, Instagram, you can find me there as Tallsquall. Bird in the Storm, I will certainly, we have accounts there as well. Not as many people know about those, but you will certainly find out about all of those out on the Twitter.
Sweet. That's awesome. So many things going on, and you are a shining light. And so
are.
hopefully we're
Thank
pointing
you.
more light at you, and we'll reflect back, and soon it'll be like this prism of rainbows everywhere.
Hey, every little
amazing.
candle brings some more light to the world. So
Yes. Well, you are
Very
doing
true.
great things for our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me on. I've really enjoyed talking with you all today.
Us too.
Sweet.